Hello, so this video is on the OP900P. This is what a built-in printer. This is the printer on the side. It's connected to this indicator. So it acts the same as a normal 900 indicator, just with a printer. So this exact printer, if you ever have issues where it's not printing, like you get nothing at all, or it sounds like it's doing something, but it's not. First, you gotta make sure that the light's on, the green. Very hard to see it. You might see the green light on. So you know the printer is getting power. Okay, so certain settings you need to check. The C18 and C19 settings are correct. So hold down the hold and print button. And you see C01. So we want to go to C18, but move left, incrementing by 0. Go back right, and you can press tear to go to C18. That's what the arrows underneath are for. So make sure C18 is equal to 2, because that's what the printer uses. And C19 is for the baud rate, which should be 3, which is 9600. That's what it runs on. So at least with that, it should get something. And if this lights up and you hold down the print, it should do something. So we need to check also the paper while we're here. Pull lever and see there's the roll, the ink ribbon. So I can make sure this is fine. Close. And if this doesn't close because you broke it off, then you're going to have to replace the printer, and the rest of the video will show you how to replace it, and you can just buy a new one through us directly. So you see here the printer, and then when I hold down the print button, it's like it's struggling to print out something. It's not able to actually print out the receipt. So connect it to the scale, and actually try testing it out. Okay, to actually remove the printer, you're going to have to remove all the screws, so I left just 2 screws in. And be careful because the battery's on the back, hanging, dangling from some wires, so you don't want to yank on the cables. So set it down and you'll see what I mean. Here's the battery, and you see the connection to the printer itself. So you see there's 2 connectors here that hold in the printer. Those are the only 2 connections. So I'm going to just be careful with this, turn it back over, and I'll show you the connections. So you're here, careful with the lever, not to push too hard. Remove the paper. And you'll see there's 2 screws here. So when you start unscrewing it, you'll notice from the back that these 2 connections will come out. If you have a normal screwdriver, it's very small. It might take you a while, so I have a torque screwdriver, where like a drill, you just hold it down and it keeps going. So what I'm going to do is loosen those 2 screws up. And you notice as I take that out, you'll notice this little nut right here on this plastic connector here. Not to lose this, so I'm going to do that for both. I'm holding in the back. You kind of see. Okay, so there's a little plastic connector, and look at the orientation it was in. It went this way. If you put it in this way, it will stick out. The printer will just be flopping out like this. Make sure when you put it back, it's here, and the little nut right here is on there. So I'll put this aside. Now let's start the next one. Okay, so you notice how it's actually falling off, and these are 2 plastic ends, so make sure you don't lose the nut. They both have it, because without this nut, little metal nut on there, you won't be able to screw it back on. So it should be in there. Might have fell down, or it might still be on the screw, which may have to hold it down and screw it out. But anyways, at least you're able to remove it. So this bad one, you see up there, there's 1 cable that provides power and data. So careful not to damage it. Pulling it down. And we're gonna careful with this connector not to break off the ends. I took off the bad printer, so put this aside. And don't be too worried if you broke off one of the connectors. It actually happened to me. You see this one right here, I broke off, but I was able to put it back on and crimp it down. Or you could just buy a replacement cable. It just goes to the board. So you could buy another cable from us if you break this by accident. Not too big a deal. So Now get your new printer, and we're gonna put it back in the same way. So first, we're gonna start off with the power data cable, but we're gonna make sure it goes in first, and then connect it. You see how I have it on here, and I have my cable on there. So the tricky part is now you're gonna close it up, and we're gonna do the reverse of how we put it on there. So maybe you might need to remove this nut a little bit, make sure it's straight, and we're gonna line it up and make sure the orientation is correct. Make sure that nut's on there because it's going this way. Make sure the nut's on there, and you'll see putting it this way with this end. So we're trying to line it up, and you'll see how I'm lining up the nut here. And we're actually gonna hold this in while I screw the other side. So I'm gonna get my screwdriver again. And I'm gonna tighten this. So I'm gonna open up the hatch. And here you see the screw. So from this end, I'm gonna hold down the nut here on this end. And I'm gonna tighten down while holding the printer in, because you don't want to make sure it's not flopping out. Make sure it's all the way in. And just tighten the screw. You know you put the nut on the correct way if there's no gap and you can't pull this out. So we're gonna do the same thing with the other one. Remember the correct orientation. And this is the hardest part, just making sure the actual orientation is fine. But once you know how it is, it should be pretty simple. We're gonna line this screw up a little bit. Make sure the nut doesn't fall off. Okay. While you screw on the other screw now. Make sure it went through the nut. Okay, that is tight in there. Make sure the power's on there. And I'm not going to close it up all the way because you want to test it out before, see if it's working. So let's close it back. Don't forget the battery's there so you don't just yank it by the battery cord. Okay, so this one doesn't have paper in it. So let's get the paper roll. And you can reuse it from the last one because this one is fine. The paper had nothing to do with it, so. And you can always buy new paper rolls through us as well if you don't have one. So we're here. And it's going to be hard to see because it's not super bright, but this should be lighting up. It's good. Let me hold this. 14 pounds and hold down the print. Make sure you have the right settings. Don't forget the C18-2 and C19-3. And that's how you place the printer on 900 but with a built-in printer.